Good evening and welcome to AG Talks. I'm your host, Ansley Gibbs. On today's show, we will be discussing what you need to know about public speaking, more specifically, communication. As Ms. Gresham explained in the public speaking lecture, we as humans feel the need for approval when speaking in public. This is why we feel so nervous to speak because we are letting ourselves be vulnerable to failure or even criticism. Public speaking is almost a type of rhetorical speaking because oftentimes we are asking questions that aren't meant to be answered. But many times, speeches can be considered a call and response type of speaking. As you can see in the diagram, the person delivering the message is the source. The message being delivered contains the channel, which is the source of information, which could be a website, a letter, a book, or even a word of mouth from someone else. And also the feedback, which can be yawning of the audience, eye contact of the audience, clapping from the audience. In this case, it would be an email from a fellow audience member or an instructor. And the person receiving the message is, of course, the receiver. This is brought to you by Ms. Gresham's public speaking lecture. The next segment of today's show will be focusing on social norms. Social norms can be defined as unwritten rules of behavior that are considered acceptable to society. These norms can define how we perceive a person and how they perceive us. A few examples found throughout the Social Norms Lecture 1 could be shaking hands when you meet someone, holding eye contact with whom you are speaking with, and saying respectable phrases like I'm sorry, thank you, and you're welcome. Expectations are based on social norms. If a teacher expects good grades, good conduct, and respect while they are teaching, they should receive those. If these rules aren't followed, there could be a penalty such as detention, a grade deduction, or even expulsion. Same goes along with public speaking. If these norms aren't followed, you could receive awkward looks from the audience, the booing of the audience, and even a bad review of some type. This message is brought to you by our sponsors at TED.com. If you want to learn more information about how to be a better public speaker, head on over to TED.com where you will find tons of videos uncovering everything you need to know. That's TED.com. Welcome back to AG Talks. I'm your host, Ansley Gibbs. After talking about public speaking, you may be wondering what it means to have communication apprehension. Communication apprehension is commonly known as the fear and anxiety associated with either real or anticipated communication with people. We have a special guest here today to demonstrate how communication apprehension can affect one's body and mind when speaking in public. There are many physiological and psychological effects that public speaking can have on a person. The most common effect is nausea or butterflies. If someone wants to eat a greasy meal before speaking, that is not always a good idea. This could very well result in the person getting sick on stage and exposing what they ate for lunch. Stress is also a known factor. You may see someone swaying back and forth on stage or acting very jittery. Those odd things you see people doing while speaking are more than likely induced by their stress. This can also make the speaker talk about irrelevant ideas on stage. This is most commonly known as jibber jabber. So, you may be wondering, are there ways to avoid this communication apprehension? Sure enough, there is. Stated by Ms. Gresham in Lecture 2, the best way to manage this fear and anxiety is to just breathe. Take deep breaths that fill up all your lungs and exhale just a few times. I usually count to 10 when I'm feeling very nervous. If you aren't afraid of going outside your comfort zone, Amy Cuddy from TED Talks suggests doing a Wonder Woman pose, where you put your arms above your head, or even just rest your arms on your hips. This can really release the stress and provide more stability before or during your speech. Well, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Stated by Miss Gresham herself in Lecture 3, the best advice you can give yourself when speaking in public is to not worry about what others might think. Believe it or not, the audience is on your side. I can guarantee the audience will be just as proud as you when you say your last words. The applause works every time. Thank you for tuning in to AG Talks. This is your host, Ansley Gibbs, and I'm signing out for the night. I'll see you all tomorrow night at 8 p.m.